if you still have a different attitude towards that proposition, then you didn't get it.
100%. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if we're talking about this, I actually am wondering to point this question at you. Like, what do you think about? Because how utilitarian are you with this? Because if you would assume that asking people to reduce would actually save more animals, like say you during your lifetime you will outreach 1,000 people. I'm sure it will be way more, right? But let's assume that it's 1,000 people, and those 1,000 people, if you find out through some weird statistics that it would have been better for them to telling them to reduce would have got them closer to veganism or faster towards veganism, do you think it would be a better idea to call out and say reduce, or do you think it's a better idea to try to get them to understand the issue and just go?
Okay, so it's already baked in the hypothetical that it would be a better thing in terms of reducing. Yeah, like I'm not a utilitarian like that. So even if it turned out to be, because obviously in reality it's an empirical question. We don't know if advocating for meatless Mondays or advocating for abolitionism is going to reduce the amounts of animal murder. In reality, it's an empirical question. But in this hypothetical, where it's like already true that we would convince more people promoting meatless Mondays or some shit like that, I personally wouldn't do it. Like I personally wouldn't feel comfortable advocating for that trash, man. Like I'm an abolitionist. I advocate for like ending the animal holocaust. Like if there's like a certain threshold, something like I'm like creating like millions of vegans by promoting meatless Mondays or something, like maybe, but like I'm not a utilitarian like that.
Beatless Monday.
Yeah, rape.
Beating your wife only.
I don't feel comfortable with that. And I wouldn't feel comfortable like that in the days of slavery. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that in the days of slavery, like advocating for treating your slave better or like something like that, or like on Mondays. No, I would advocate for abolitionism. I would do the same thing for animals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why when I had this question in my head was because I said to myself, at some point we're definitely going to have lab-grown meat, not necessarily for the animals, but rather because it's extremely bad for the environment. It's extremely expensive to produce meat, and it's clearly unsustainable, right? So all of this is the driving factors of most governments, most companies, and all of this to adopt the plant-based and lab-grown meat. Unfortunately, they don't care about the morality or any of it. So my thinking is that, let's say 2100 is when lab-grown meat will be 100% on the market, right? So by 2100, that means a certain amount of animals will die for that. So my question was in my head, like, okay, but if, let's say, a million, Jesus Christ, a million probably animals die until then, even more than that. But like, let's say there's this number that die until then. If we advocate slightly differently for different things, like reducing it, and less animals die, even if the outcome eventually is the same, but for different reasons, are we? Because you see, like, are we putting ourselves first when we're saying, I advocate for abolishing this? Yeah, or like I'm not a utilitarian, so I'm also an abolitionist, but these questions come to my head, so I always like to hear answers from others people, what they think about that.
Yeah, for me, it's about like sticking to the truth and advocating what I believe is the right thing. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable advocating for anything less than abolitionism. Like and I have some deontology on my ethical system, not like a utilitarian.
I see.
Yeah, like it's an empirical question, and in reality, we have no reason to believe like advocating for reducitarianism is like a stronger message to save animals than abolitionism. Like I see no reason to believe that, so I don't know why I would put those ideas out there, which are wrong.
No, 100%.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're only seeing. They would do it for themselves, not for the animals. So if they don't really have the animals in mind, they're not gonna care to go back. So it's like we gotta create like ethical vegans, not utilitarians, animal eaters, because they're not gonna see an issue with eating animals and using animals, riding animals.
Reducitarian would be the word.
Like, yeah. So
I completely agree. I believe
Yeah,
that the reason why the
Yeah, go
reason
ahead.
why I make this exercise for my head, that's a lot of the times, is because and by the way, Jigger, I'm sorry if I keep interrupting you. Sometimes I interrupt you because I feel like I understand what point you're making, and I just
yeah.
want to continue the conversation because your connection is not great. That's the only reason. I think you're making great points.
Oh,
It's just that
sorry.
this connection isn't always great, right? So the reason why I think about this a lot of the times is because I try to put myself in. I really want people to go vegan. I really want this, and sometimes I put myself in the position of a person who is just meeting the stranger on the street, and they're like, the stranger tells them that everything they thought they're doing their whole life, they've been taught, is not right. So I try to think of myself of, okay, well, obviously, to me, veganism is logical. It's right. I didn't need to see the videos. It just makes a lot of sense to me, right? But then again, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a bias towards myself, right? But I have, with all the information that I have right now, it's the most logical conclusion to me. But if somebody comes and tells me, "Hey, there's new information. There's this logical conclusion," I try to challenge myself whether I don't know if I would be able to say reduce because I believe so strongly in this, right? So is it me who's being selfish if somebody would bring new information and say this, or is it, you see what I mean? Like, that's kind of my train of thought right here, and trying to picture myself in the position of the people to try and see what would get them to change, because what would get me to change, to say, okay, if somebody gives me empirical data 100% true that reducing, like, it's a hypothetical, obviously, right? Like, if hypothetically speaking, enforcing reducing would save more animals than advocating for abolition, would I be able to do it? And I don't know. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what your values are. I personally see it as an evil thing to promote that. Like I see it as lying, as putting like evil, false information out there that it's a good thing to reduce instead of quitting cold turkey or abolishing this horrific industry.
Actually, you made a very good point there. By the way, I don't want to be wrong. Is it Eddie or Eri? Is it like with a D or with an R?
No, with an R.
R.
Yeah.
Eri. Okay.
Heriberto.
Because I've been
Heriberto.
Heriberto. Okay, that's how. Okay, so you made a very good point there, Eri, and I agree. Like, maybe this is the answer to all of it, right? Because it shouldn't be that the ends justifies the means, right? It should never be that we can justify saying or lying or doing all sorts of shit just to justify our own conclusion, right? The whole point of it should be, at each point that you're going forward, you should be advocating for things that are true, things that are moral, and yeah.
Yeah, things that stand the test of time, things that you see that are in the right side of history, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what your values are. You could be like a stone cold utilitarian, and that sounds good to you. It doesn't sound good to me.
Yeah, me neither. No, I'm not. I'm definitely not that. I actually have a problem with utilitarianism. But given that we're talking about utilitarianism, and I know how there's this predators discussion going around, I know your position, that you say. So let me reiterate if I understand your position correctly. Your position is that we should kill predators to save the victims, right? To save the prey, the animals that are prey, correct?
More specifically, my position is that killing odd ordered predators is either morally justified or morally good. It might even be a good thing.
Okay, but does that mean, because does that mean that right now, let's say you have the power right now to do this, does that mean that you would go in the wild and kill the lions?